He's definitely brutal. He's always savage, and you're definitely getting wrecked.
So obviously, this stream is brought to you by a bunch of partners. There's obviously delicious gamer sops. I think the best energy drink / energy formula / pre-workout. If you don't know, it doesn't have a load of filler in it. You can get like 60 servings in a tub like that. You can get like 100 servings in a tub like that. It can literally fit in your pocket. No bigger than your pocket. It's way smaller than the other varieties from other rival companies. I think it's way less chemically. It's got quite a nice flavour to it. In my opinion, it doesn't taste super artificial. Also, sugar-free. So if you do keto or you're on any sort of diet or calorie restriction, pretty good for you in that sense. And I find it just has a really slow release, and then it doesn't have the harsh drop off. You don't feel like you crash, you just feel like you gradually come back down to earth and land after a few hours. So you can get 10% off and support me by using the code Thorin, THORIN, at gamesup.gg. And I thought the reason this one's a good one is, one, it's CSGO, so it's all stuff in the past. This can't get old, can it? It's evergreen content. And actually, it's a rare example of one where I don't need to like take half an hour and do it myself. It's already got them all on, which is this one here was made. Now, the person who made it made a mistake, which is they've put all CSGO major champions, but they've put 20 images, and what they've done is add Na'Vi, and they've forgotten that that's CS2, not CSGO. So if we just ignore this one, Na'Vi for Copenhagen 2024, these are the other 19 teams in order that won. Well, I mean, obviously there's more than that, but these are the 19 champions of the CSGO majors. So in the past, I've done a tier list where I ranked the majors themselves, but this is, if you remember, the actual content that I made fun of some of the pro players for, where people like Simple were voting like Gambit Krakow, like A tier or something mad like that, or like S minus or something. So we're going to do a proper S, A, B, C, D, F, and we're going to do all the champions of the majors, and we're going to rank where they all deserve to go. I've got such a bad fucking cold at the moment. So they're in order. So you start with Fanatic at DreamHack Winter, Virtus.pro at EMS1 Katowice, you have NIP at ESL1 Cologne, you have Team LDLC at DreamHack Winter. You have Fanatic at Katowice 2015. You have Fanatic at Cologne 2015. You have Envious at DreamHack Cluj-Napoca. You have Luminosity Gaming at MLG Columbus. You have SK Gaming, same team, at ESL1 Cologne. You have Astralis' first major, was obviously E-League Atlanta. Then Gambit somehow fluked PGL Krakow. Then you had Cloud9 winning Boston Major over FaZe. Then you had Astralis win FaZe London Major. Then you had Astralis win Starladder Berlin Major. Katowice 2019. Then you had Astralis win Berlin Major, Starladder. Then you had Na'Vi win the first one after ye old Koof period, which was obviously Na'Vi wins PGL Stockholm. Then you had FaZe Clan won when they got ROPS at PGL Antwerp 2022. Then you had Outsiders. I call them Virtus.pro because they were owned by Virtus.pro, and Virtus.pro wasn't a Russian organisation at the time. Fuck Carmack. I call Virtus.pro / Outsiders the I Am Rio champions. The last ever CSGO major champion, that's why I will not be doing Na'Vi at the end, was of course Ziwoo's Vitality, who beat all those nobody teams who weren't ranked top 18 in the world in the playoffs of Blast Paris Major. So for S tier, because always I just start with the strong ones and I do it in order, immediately out the gate I'm thinking of an Astralis one. So if I'm thinking, right, obviously I think the Astralis latter three were much stronger than the first one, where they had Kirby, and I also think they barely won that one. And I also think the 2019 one, while it was like impressive, they didn't lose it. Remember, these three, they didn't lose a single map in the playoffs. I actually think if you look at the eye test of how good Astralis was, and you look at their competition they were playing against and how well they played in those matches, if I have to pick the Astralis one that's the most dominant win, then it's probably actually the Katowice one. Because the difference is they have quite a dominant win in the sense of, if you just look at the results, like the way they beat Liquid, it wasn't that close. I mean, it was close, but it wasn't that close. NRG was like close at times, but then not towards the end of the game. And Vanguard was easy, but Vanguard's a shitter opponent. If you think about it, when they were playing at Katowice, that was the one where they beat... Let me think, who was the first opponent? I think NIP in the first round, where NIP wasn't that good, to be fair. But then in the semis, they beat MIBR, who, to be fair, wasn't that good. And then the final, they beat ENTS, who was actually finally becoming really good. I guess the opposition wasn't that tough there. But then again, you can only beat who's in front of you. VP would be up there too. Obviously, VP did lose a map to LGB, but that was the one that was in OT on Mirage, and they smashed every other map. I mean, look, VP is probably going to be S tier anyway, since we're talking about winning a tournament. They only lost one map here, and it's very close. So I'll put them all in S, and then I guess we'll decide later who goes where. So I'm definitely putting the Katowice one there. I think we'll put Face at London as well, because that was another one where they were undefeated in the playoffs, but they played some pretty good opposition team. Liquid was very good at the time, 2018 lineup with Taco. You obviously had FaZe. Clan was still really good. This was the last one of the last events. It was the last major where they had Carrigan in the lineup. I mean, I'm potentially going to put the other Astralis ones there too, but for now we're deciding based on this. Like, this is all the champions ever. So it's not just the run, it's the champions, a mixture of how good the... Thing is, I'm not just going to do it by how good the team was. Like, there's even the same team even. I'm going to do it the team at this major. Like, how good was this team? That's how we're going to rank them. So VP's definitely up there. This is the Katowice one. This is the Face at London one. Who else, right? LDLC is not going to be S tier, and the reason why is obvious. They actually won a major without winning all 3 best-of-3 series. So they lost the one to Fanatic, so I can't give them that one. That already makes me feel like they're more like C tier for now. NIP fluked that major in the most insane fashion ever in every round of the tournament. If you don't know, like, they lost to Shox' Epsilon on Cobblestone randomised in the group stage. Then they were able to barely beat Cloud9 with Sean Gares and Shroud and Skadoodle. Some would say maybe they shouldn't have won that game. Then in the semis, they barely beat LDLC of Happy and Maniac and Uzi and Apex. They barely beat that one. Then the final, it was a little bit better, but it's still very close. They could have lost to Fnatic 2-0. So NIP is going to be way down there. That might even be F. Even though they were an all-time great team, this is one of the worst showings. It just happened to be the one that won the major. Similarly, DreamHack, I didn't think their DreamHack win was that great from this team. I don't know if anyone's actually going to go an F. Is anyone actually going to go an F? That's a bit harsh, isn't it? Right, for now, we'll put all the flukes in here, shall we? And we'll decide on the flukes later. I'm not going to do Na'Vi because I'm not putting them in because it's CS2. I mean, immediately Na'Vi for Stockholm goes in S tier, though. It's the one where they didn't lose a single map. Simple had like record-breaking numbers. Their top 3 players were all fucking insane. Even Perfecto was fragging out. That's got to be up there. I think FaZe winning Antwerp was pretty impressive too. Like, they had their close games, but they also were really good. They could have lost the final. We'll see. I mean, there can't be too many S-tier people up here, so I'll certainly think about that later. SK winning ESL1 Clone also feels like this. Because that was the one where the only real team that realistically could have beaten them was... They could have lost to VP. There was that close third Mirage game. And they certainly could if they'd have played Na'Vi or Fnatic in the final have lost. It's just the team wasn't the team that was going to lose to them. They're definitely up there. It's a very, very good team there. I actually think Luminosity is more of an A tier. If you just go and look, like, they obviously absolutely could have lost to Liquid 2-0. They could themselves have lost the final to Na'Vi. They even could have lost to VP. They lost a map to them. If you remember, at these 2 majors, they only lost 1 map. It was to VP each time. And that was when people kept saying that year that VP was in their slump. But that was mainly because of online player. Gambit's going to go there for now, but some of these I actually might move down. Like, I actually might, for real, just consider putting Gambit to the bottom, by the way. I think they might actually be the worst of all these teams. Like, which team's worse than Gambit? Like, remember, Cloud9 was actually a better team than Gambit was, even around the time these majors happened. So maybe Gambit goes to the bottom. Outsiders feels like a C or a B. You didn't really play that much good competition. Eye test-wise, I think you just smurfed this event. So, okay, you were good at this event, but you weren't that great other than that, and it was pretty obvious you were never going to win anything else. Believe it or not, even though Envy, remember, they were like 1 round from not making the final when they played against G2 in that semi-final. This was the one where, if you don't know the story of Envious at this major, it is actually true that supposedly if they didn't win this major, they'd probably just break that lineup up immediately. Obviously, they wait till the end of the year, then kick Kiyoshima out, but they supposedly had such a bad boot camp that when they were scrimming, they were just losing so much, they just said, let's stop scrimming so we don't destroy our motivation. And then the assumption was, when we go to the major, we, make it the round of 8 or just get grouped, then fuck it, we'll just change the lineup and do a French shuffle, but they actually end up winning the fucking thing. So I think maybe they would go C for now. Right, Star Ladder, Astralis is maybe B, because what people are going to forget about this one is they got better and better as the playoffs went on. Like, it was like close with Liquid, a little bit less close with NRG, and then in the final it wasn't close at all. But in the group stage, it was way closer than people remember. This is the one where they were losing BO1s, and then they straight up were in position to maybe even get upset by fucking Crazy with Hunter and Oton and all those guys. And then they pulled it out, and then they got to the playoffs. So there's more of a B for me. Let's see, who else? We've got all these good Fnatic ones. Right, Katowice for Fnatic in theory was the most impressive one. Like, if you want Fnatic at their peak, it's probably this one. because this is the one where, like, all of my had like Mortec 9 kills and AK kills or whatever. He was amazing at this tournament. They played some really good opposition as well. Like, this is the one where they played... Let me think. Who did they play in the first round is the question. Because I know this is the one where in the semis they play Virtus.pro and it's a close game. And then the final they play NIP and Alu get CSGO on Dust2, but it's a really close 3 maps. Who did they play in the round of 8 though? Maybe Luminosity? Because that might be the first time Luminosity made it out of the groups. Let me double check that actually. I'll just really quickly look that up. I'm feeling like it could be Luminosity and they just banged them out instantly 2-0. Let's just have a look at that quickly. Oh, they actually played Penta. That was the one where Penta shocked Kenny S's Titan and made it to the playoffs. And then just got completely banged out. And then, as I said, semis was VP, and it was a really close Cobblestone game. But then the Mirage win was pretty convincing for Fnatic. And then the final, it was 2-1 against NIP, but it was pretty close. So Fnatic definitely up there. Then winning Cologne was more like an A for me. Because if you remember, that's the one where VP almost had them. They almost had them in the semis. VP almost had them. And then in the final, they also almost lost the opener. If you remember on Dust 2, they were down, what was it, like 8-15 as went mad when Crims did that bonkers 1vx round in closet/car area on B site of Dust 2. And then they did that comeback. Apex did the peek out into all those people like, yeah, probably wondering how I got here. When he saw the 4 AWPers from Team Spawn. So that one's up there. Let me think. Where else would these people go? So I've only got 2 more to do. I actually don't think Vitality was that great at this major. Like, wasn't Vitality more of like a C? I mean, remember, they absolutely were in position to potentially lose to all the shitter opponents they played in the playoffs. Into the Breach was giving them work for the first parts of both maps. Apex really challenged them. And then Game Legion almost got it to a 3rd map. Including, by the way, a game on Nuke that they almost won when Nuke was one of the maps that was in that streak when Vitality was winning the tournaments. IM Rio into the major. So I feel like they're more like a C team, even though they will look, eye test wise, they're pretty fucking good. They're better than the Fluke teams. And then Astralis winning the E-League Atlanta feels more like a B or an A. Because you were good. This was also a good tournament. So the problem is you were dodgy as fuck in the Swiss. If people don't remember, they had to go through 3-2 because they kept losing these really close games to like SK Gaming, Navi. Didn't they even... Have I got that wrong? SK Gaming, Navi. Yeah, this must be the 2 teams they lost to. And then in the playoffs, they were able to beat Navi, who they rematched. They didn't play SK. They played Fnatic in the semis, the one with Disco Tomlin. And then the final, they obviously beat Virtus.pro, which was a very close game. It was an epic game, and they did do some great things in those. But by the way, to be fair, in the same way as they could have lost Overpass and they could have lost Train, they also actually, interestingly, if I ever do demo reviews, I'll definitely do one of these when I get my new PC in like a month or 2. I'll have to show you the map everyone forgets about in memory holes definitely is actually the first map of that final, the Nuke rework, where Virtus.pro picks it. And there's a point in that game where it's like 12-12 where VP does some like mad push with CZs and gets a kill on CT side Nuke where it completely turns the map for their favour. Otherwise, actually Astralis was in position to potentially win that and maybe then it could have been 2-0. Also, obviously could have been 2-0 VP on Overpass and it could have been 2-1 VP on Train. They were up, 13-7, 13-8. So, is that actually, the problem is though, that surely E-League Atlanta can't be better than Starlight and Berlin, though. They're both sort of semi-sus. The problem is they came into such bad form to Berlin. And is that really better than Luminosity? Ooh, this is tough. This is tough. Like, first of all, probably someone has to be in F tier. So who is the worst of these teams? Who do I not really believe in? Because we'll go major champions. I'm taking also like how good they were as a team, not just only at this tournament as well. So major champions. I think Gambit should be last. Like NIP was an all-time great team, but at this tournament they were pretty poor. I think they should probably be last too. Like I actually think Cloud9 winning is less of a fluke than NIP winning, even though NIP is less of a fluke in the sense they have greater players, but the way they played at that tournament was ass. DreamHack, I mean, this was a very good set of wins from Fnatic. It's just that if you look who they played, for my money, they got to dodge all the elite teams except NIP, and then NIP just inexplicably lost that third map. LDLC wins that tournament. Let me think. I mean, LDLC was the second best team in the world. It's only really Fnatic could have beaten them, but they did indeed lose to Fnatic. So how can I put them higher? I think LDLC has to stay there. If they're actually beaten Fnatic in that game, I'd probably put them in B or maybe even A tier because they were a very strong team individually. This was the death ball era when Happy himself was really good. The reason I gave, if you remember, the MVP to Kiyashima is he just had some really crazy fucking headshots. He had to just do some really insane work. You look at the stats, it's probably Happy for that one. Outsiders, if you think the problem they have is who they beat. Think about who they beat in that major. They beat Fnatic, as in like the Mezzi lineup. They beat Mouse because Cloud9 shit the bed. So they had to play Mouse in the semis of major with like Torji. And this is actually, let me think. Yeah, Exertion had joined at that time, but you still had Dexter. And then in the final, you beat Heroic, who, look, was a great team, but they never really got it done except at Blast. So I think Outsiders stays there probably. Envious, Vitality. Like, if we're going on strength of the teams, Vitality isn't really at this level, is it? They'd probably be more there. But again, what am I ranking here? Am I ranking them at this major? That's the problem I've realised now with this tier is, am I ranking how great these particular teams are, or am I ranking them when they won this major? I guess I'm sort of doing a blend of the two. There's too many teams in S, though, isn't it? I guess there could be because it is major winners. To be fair, these are the greatest teams of all time. Like, look, that's the same lineup, but this is them at their peak. That's when they win Katowice and Face at London, where they were very dominant. That's VP winning with only one map loss. That's Na'Vi with 0 map losses. That's FaZe. I mean, I guess you could maybe argue FaZe was more like that. I do think they were really good, though. This is the one where Rain was the MVP, if people remember, so maybe FaZe should stay up there. Na'Vi, SK Gaming. I think S tier is totally fine. A tier, that's where it's a bit harder. Like Luminosity, they did only lose a map. I mean, look, I give them points for coming back against Liquid. It's just how many teams except Liquid could have even lost that game. And then in the final, a big part of why it looked so good is because you never had to go to the third map because Guardian had the injury. And how insane did you actually look like? Cold Zero was insane. Other people, not as much. Maybe that's B tier. So maybe we're putting something else into A tier here. Like, let me see. I'm not going to do Star Ladder. I don't think they were good enough there. E-League Atlanta, like I said, they didn't do that great in the actual group stage. Maybe there's only one A-tier team. Maybe it's just Fnatic at Cologne, because this was kind of like Fnatic stealing one on the way out the door when they shouldn't really have won. It wasn't close to their peak. In my opinion, the best periods of that Fnatic team was actually before Olofmeister came online, which was the major that in the end LDLC won. That would have been fitting to win. Or Katowice, where they were just insane who Olofmeister was the best player in the world. Although, I guess he became the best player in the world from that major onwards. At the time, he just said Kenny S was actually the best player. Let me see. Outsiders, Fnatic. Let me just look up something else, actually. Like, I think what we need to look up is what Fnatic was like at the first DreamHack winter. I just need to see, because I think they had like quite a lot of parity in their group, but it wasn't the hardest teams is the issue. Let's see. Yes, they won their group, and their group featured LGB, who was obviously good. It was people like Olaf and Crims, but this is when they were still on their rise. Clan Mystic, who had just won ESWC, and then Na'Vi was like all right, but weren't like a... So there's 0 contenders here, unless you think like, Clan Mystic would have been a dark horse. They wouldn't be a contender. So that's not that crazy. Then you played Recursive, who was the Kenny S... Maniac and Happy lineup. Yes, it was, with GMX and Uzi as well. So it's not really that tough an opponent in the round of 8. Somehow you got to play Colt because they beat Astana Dragons. You also didn't play that many tough opponents here, actually. So, I'm not going to move you up. I think you have to stay D for that one. Gambit, if people remember, just didn't play good teams. Like basically, they played Fnatic, but it was the Fnatic that was doing like the last dance where they ran back the 2015 lineup, but in 2017, you had... Astralis was obviously the big scalp in the semis. It was a very close game. And then the final you beat Immortals. But Immortals not only didn't play that great, but that's the one where famously the reason Kirby got ye old head punched in is because he had the audacity to point out to Immortals players, maybe you shouldn't be out partying in a fucking nightclub the night before the major final. So I think Gambit just played the worst major of them all. NIP actually played very good opposition. It's just they barely beat them and they looked fucking terrible doing it. So I maybe could have put them D by virtue of the players. I mean, you have Get Right, you have Forest, you have Freiburg, still very good at the time. Fiflaren was fucking terrible. This is the tournament, if you don't know, where he goes like minus 72 for this major, but they win it. So that's fucking bonkers, all right. Remember, C9 did beat good opposition. They beat G2, who admittedly hadn't won a playoff series in months at that point in time, but they were the super team that had won tournaments that year. They beat SK in the semis, who, look, they had a stand-in. They had Phelps instead of Bolts, but they were still a team that had won championships with that lineup, and then they finally beat FaZe Cloud, won a few titles and was in loads of finals and semis. So that's actually a pretty good set of opposition. In terms of how you actually played, like, I thought the final was mad sus, and you basically almost lost the final, didn't you? You were down like 7-13 on the third map. So I think that's fair to keep that at D. I think I actually like this. I think this is actually pretty good right now. I know it seems weird that there's only one A team, but I think that's actually plausible for where these teams are. Because the issue is, like I say, I think what people are going to always forget about Astralis is I've been very fair. I've given Astralis 2 different S-tier rankings. But the reason why they only get B for the others is these are 2 majors where in the group stage they looked sus. In Berlin, they actually looked like they might not even make the playoffs and certainly wouldn't win the playoffs when the playoffs bracket was drawn. And then the one for Atlanta, like I say, they were 3-2. They barely won the final. I think that's totally legit. Like, the problem here is this. Part of me feels like Luminosity could go into A, but I also then think to myself, yeah, but the Liquid result was terrible. The Guardian angle in the final makes it not as impressive, and you lost a map in the other playoff series to VP. That sort of all evens it out. If anything, I'm being kind to Vitality. Let me have a look at that, actually. Maybe I should quickly look at Vitality's major. I would pull these up on screen as we're looking now, but I'm only looking really quickly. There's nothing really to look at in general. Let me just see. Right, so they didn't have to play the first Swiss. In the second Swiss, they played Nuke against G2, who admittedly was the top team at the time. They played, who'd won Katowice, remember. They played Vertigo against Ents, who was a good team. And then they beat Monty 2-0. Monty actually ended up being a decent enough squad. They made the top 8 of this tournament. So they 3-0'd the Swiss. Like, mainly the G2 and Ents games we care about there. And then they played into the Breach Apex game. Like, no, the problem is the opposition means I can't put that much higher. Like I say, they didn't even play that great against the opposition in the playoffs. If they'd have murked them, I'd probably instantly put them in. If they'd have played anyone good, I couldn't even have put this team, maybe not S. I don't think this team was ever truly S tier, was it? Like, this is when Spinks wasn't quite as good as he is overall. Dupree had to do probably more than you expected. Magus was really good, but the numbers weren't crazy. Zewo was excellent, but even then he would have games where he was a little bit quiet to start with. Apex was a little bit more up and down as a caller in CSGO. I actually think CS2's fit him way better on T-side calling. I think that's it. I think that's actually my list. I think logically that is what my list should be. I think it's pretty legit too, isn't it? And it's a banger. We only had, by my ranking, 7 S-tier teams in the history of the majors and 8 that were S or A. Because everyone else has caveats or reasons. Was I actually fair with everyone I kicked down here, though? Like, if you remember how this tournament went, Envious lost a map to Fanatic, but did win 2-1. Then in the semis, they were around from losing to G2, which was the Fox. Jacob, was when Jacob had a Smurf event, Makaleli, that lineup. And then in the final, they beat Na'Vi, but they barely won on train. And then, as a result, by barely winning train, which was Na'Vi's pick, they managed to win 2-0 because it was just 2 after that. But actually, that was the one where I think Happy even won like that bullshit 1v1 with a nade. There's a world where really, part of me actually thinks I could even put them down into D. But that was also where Kenny S was the MVP of the major. He did play very well. And to be fair, Na'Vi was probably like your 5th or 6th best team at the time. You played them in the final. G2 was more like, let's say, 8th or 9th best team. You played them in the semi. Fnatic at the time still would have been like 4th best team, probably. You played them in the quarters. But the thing is, the eye test didn't really check out for Envious here. Yeah, I think that's it. And we're just going to stick with that. Obviously, you feel free to disagree. And if this is the YouTube video, put your comments in the YouTube comments as to who you think should have been higher, lower, or, I mean, obviously there's no one missing, but what reasons you think are fraudulent or legit. Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Screwminati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Screwminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.